presentations can be heard, please could I ask that you keep your microphones on mute throughout the session. There'll be plenty of time for questions and feedback at the allotted times, and throughout the session, please use the chat function to ask any questions that you may have. You can write your questions in the chat at any point, and we'll cover as many questions as we can during the question and answer session. The spirit of today's session is for everyone to voice their view, as they are all important. So please feel free to tell us what you think, and remember there's no right or wrong answers here today. Ultimately, we want to build on ideas and of course create new ones, so we are providing our colleagues and members with the best possible wellbeing support. So before I introduce the other speakers and run through the session aims and outcomes of today, I'd like to play a short video providing further details about our society, which I hope you'll find helpful. So I am delighted to welcome our elected members and speakers for this evening's session. The elected members joining us this evening are Fiona Ravenscroft, Olivia Birch, Barbara Rainford and Wendy Willis. So welcome to you all. And our external presenters are Mandy Leonard, Welfare Director at Grocery Aid. Mandy has worked in the charity sector for over 20 years and for the past 4 as Welfare Director for Grocery Aid. Mandy is responsible for the charity's welfare strategy and the delivery of its programmes of emotional, practical and financial support for grocery colleagues. So welcome, Mandy. And Paul Stewart-Thompson, training lead and volunteer at Springfield Mind. Having been very successful in the hospitality industry, Paul's poor mental health unfortunately caught up with him. And after some great support from the NHS and Mind, Paul is now in the third sector, helping those who often are the most vulnerable in our society. Paul is a qualified trainer of adult mental health first aid and supports other people who find themselves in difficult times at his local Mind in Warwickshire. So again, welcome, Paul. For those of you on social media, we're encouraging you to promote this event and raise awareness around the important issues that we'll be discussing using the details outlined on the slide. I'm just going to take a few moments to run through with you the agenda for this evening's session. So in a moment, I will provide an update on what we've been doing across the society in the area of mental wellbeing. I will then pass over to Mandy, who will talk to you about the Society's partnership with Grocery Aid and how they are supporting our colleagues and their loved ones. Paul will then talk to you about the work we've been doing with both colleagues and members, and will also be providing you with some top tips on how to support your own mental health. We'll then have a question and answer session, and this will be your opportunity to ask any questions around the presentations to Mandy, Paul or myself. And as I mentioned earlier, if you can just pop those questions in the chat box, that would be great. We'll then invite you to join a short possibility session where we'll be asking you to think about how we should support the positive mental health and wellbeing of our colleagues and members. The overall aim of today's session is to gain feedback from you as members on the topic of mental wellbeing to help shape the Society's 5-year sustainability planning. If you have got access to a pen and paper, you might want to have these to hand in readiness for that session. The session forms part of a selection of sessions leading up to our AGM on the 13th of May. We'll use all ideas gathered from members at these events to kickstart a stakeholder alignment programme to help develop our Society's 5-year sustainability programme. We aim to create a member-led 5-year plan by engaging our members and other key stakeholders and experts over the summer to develop some ambitious 5-year goals that will create a positive difference on people's lives for the long term and ensuring that no one is left behind. I therefore encourage you to think big throughout the evening and consider some ambitious ideas when we carry out the possibility session later on. To help you do this, our little pioneers from a selection of our nurseries have provided their thoughts on the future in this short video.
What would you like to be when you grow up? A golfer?
Fireman. A princess.
And a princess.
If you were in charge of the world, what would you do?
Save the batteries. Save the batteries. And I'll pick up all the rubbish on the floor. And I even saw some rubbish in a little stream on the two sides.
Oh no!
That's my nanny and granddad.
What would you like to be when you grow up?
I'll be a superhero.
You want to be a superhero? What about you, Toby?
I'll be Spider-Man.
You want to be Spider-Man?
How do you think we can save the planet?
By not wasting the planet.
Yeah?
By not using the electricity so much.
When you grow up, what would you like to be?
I want to be a ballerina. I like to be a ballerina.
If you was in charge of the world, what would you do?
Tell people what to do.
How can we look after each other better?
Cuddling.
I'm sure you will agree, some absolutely great ideas from our little pioneers. I can see in the chat that some people couldn't see the video and some people are saying that they can. So apologies to those that couldn't see it. I've seen some smiling face at the bottom of my screen, so I know that some of you have been able to see it. So apologies if you haven't. As I said, the session is being recorded, so you'll be able to see that at a later date. I would like to commence with the presentations, and I will start by giving you an insight to what's been taking place across the society when it comes to wellbeing and mental health. So as I'm sure you're aware, 1 in 4 people would experience a mental health problem of some kind each year in England. And 1 in 6 people report experiencing a common mental health problem like anxiety and depression in any given week in England. These are huge numbers, and we know that people need wellbeing support now more than ever. And this is why we are so passionate at your co-op to support each and every colleague and our members with their mental wellbeing. For a number of years, we've worked in partnership with Springfield Mind, and they've supported our colleagues, members and community groups in a number of ways, which Paul will talk to you all about a little later. Mental Health First Aid England have delivered a number of training sessions for us, as have Mental Health at Work. Again, I will touch on this a little later when I talk to you about the training. Our stores support with fundraising for the national charity Mind, and to date have raised over £10,000. Jura Diamond, our health partners, are our new occupational health provider who proactively support line managers and colleagues in the workplace with any health and wellbeing issues which may arise, as well as giving the society access to a wide range of materials to signpost colleagues, so they can have access and proactively support themselves with any issues that they may have. And finally, Grocery Aid. Grocery Aid are our employee assistance provider for all colleagues to access help, support and advice. They are a fantastic charity, and shortly Mandy will talk to you in more detail about how they support our colleagues and their loved ones. Evidence suggests that there are 5 steps you can take to improve your mental health and well-being, and we use these 5 steps as a framework when we're talking to our colleagues and members. The 5 steps are referred to as the 5 ways of well-being. And they are, as you can see on the slide, the first one we've got is take notice. Paying more attention to the present can improve your mental health. This includes your thoughts and feelings, your body and the world around you. Connect. Good relationships are important for your mental well-being and can build a sense of belonging, giving you an opportunity to share positive experiences and provide emotional support to one another. Keep learning. Research shows that learning new skills can also improve your mental well-being by building a sense of purpose and helping you to connect with others. Be active. Being active is not only great for your physical health, but it supports good mental well-being by raising self-esteem. Exercising releases chemicals in your brain, and we can help to positively change your mood. And finally, give. Small acts of kindness and giving most certainly create a positive feeling, and we encourage all of our colleagues to do this by our volunteering programme, or even something small like sending a thank you card, to show appreciation for another colleague. So when it comes to training and awareness, over the past couple of years, we've provided training for both members and colleagues, and I just wanted to pick out a few of those things that we've done this evening to share with you. So earlier on this year, Mind ran a session with our charity partners on how they could maintain their wellbeing and their team's wellbeing. I think with everything that's happened over the last 11 months, we know a lot of people have been struggling with their mental health. And in some cases, even those people that have never suffered before have started to feel the pressures of the circumstances that we've been facing with COVID-19. So with that in mind, we wanted to try and do something to help, hence the session, which we hoped would be a benefit for our community partners and also allow them to take away some really helpful hints and tips and coping mechanisms to share with their colleagues and their local communities. Our Young Co-operators network, which is made up of young people aged between 16 and 25, told us that mental health is one of the key topics that matter to them. And as a result, Mind delivered an online workshop especially focused around young people's mental health. Topics included recognising the signs of mental health, self-care and reaching out to others that may need support. And this was really well received by our young members. And then for our colleagues, following a pilot in childcare, all of our society managers have now completed an e-learning module around mental health to help them understand the basics and become more aware of the signs of mental health so that they can signpost their colleagues to the support that we have available. As you may be aware, it's Mental Health Awareness Week next week, and as part of those communications, we will be launching the modules for all colleagues to complete. Our senior managers have completed a half-day training session with Mental Health First Aid England to enable them to support themselves and their teams. And at the last managers conference, Mind provided a training session that was also supported by our keynote speaker, ex-footballer Clark Carlisle. Some of you may know that Clark Carlisle has had quite a tough journey with his own mental health, and he really reinforced to us that actually it's okay not to be okay. We held mental health drop-in sessions in travel to support our colleagues in the virtual call centre who have had a particularly challenging year, and those feeling anxious about returning from furlough. We will look to use this model for other groups. Similarly, we have created a bespoke wellbeing support package to address the unique challenges faced by our funeral colleagues. This has been developed in partnership with Mental Health at Work and has been really well received. Using our internal website, Colleagues Connect, we have been able to provide support for colleagues throughout the pandemic and raise awareness of mental health issues, including what action colleagues can take if they're worried about their mental health or someone that they may know. Resources have included articles, podcasts, short videos, and of course our society policies. A new wellbeing section has been added to our check-in templates, used to guide management reviews with our colleagues to ensure we are inquiring on a regular basis on how our colleagues are coping and how they are feeling. As I mentioned earlier, it's Mental Health Awareness Week next week, so we're encouraging all our colleagues to be active, whether that's taking their dog for a walk, going on their treadmill, cycling, whatever that may be. And for every mile a colleague records, we'll be making a donation to Springfield Mind for the support they've given the society over the last 12 months. We've also had some really brave colleagues sharing their mental health journeys, and I think it would be remiss of me not to mention that tonight. These colleagues have been, as I say, very brave in sharing their journeys, and I think that's really helped to support with reducing the stigma around mental health across our colleagues. We support a number of national awareness days such as stress awareness, suicide awareness, World Mental Health Day, to name but a few, and we'll continue to raise awareness on these important days across our colleagues and members. Every month we complete a pulse survey that all of our colleagues can access, and this gives our colleagues the opportunity to have their voice. The pulse surveys do just that, measure a pulse of how our colleagues are feeling, so it enables us to act quickly and react on the feedback that they've given us. So what's next? Clearly, we will continue with what we have in place and build on this to further support our colleagues and members with their mental wellbeing. We have partnered with a company called Every Mind at Work, and in the coming months we'll be launching a wellbeing app to our colleagues. The app is designed to support all colleagues in an anonymous way, giving them a tool to use 24/7 whenever they need to. With content and coping strategies being added on a weekly basis, and with an Every Mind score feature, the app allows colleagues to track and manage their mental wellbeing, with an approach to educate and empower our colleagues to focus on self-care. We will also be introducing mental health champions to provide peer-to-peer support and signposting. These champions will be supported with their own mental health by Every Mind whilst in the role as a champion. We also hope to be signatories of the Mental Health at Work commitment, which is a simple evidence-based framework. The commitment has now been updated to reflect the impact of COVID-19 and as it's recognised that the effect of COVID-19 will be felt for years to come. The 6 pillars of the framework, which are aligned to the Thriving at Work Stevenson Farmer review into workplace mental health, are prioritising mental health in the workplace by developing and delivering a systematic programme of activity, proactively ensuring job design and organisational culture drive positive mental health and outcomes, promote an open culture on mental health so our colleagues and members feel that they can talk about that, increase the confidence and capability in the organisation, provide mental health tools and support, and lastly, increase transparency and accountability through internal and external reporting. And I think by having this framework, it will really ensure we can review our practices and ensure that we are doing our absolute best for our colleagues and members. I hope that's given you an overview of the activity that's been happening across the society. And I'd now like to pass over to Mandy Leonard from Grocery Aid. Thank you. Mandy, you're on mute.
Thanks very much, Becky, and thanks very much everybody for inviting me to join your call today. As Becky said, my name's Mandy Leonard and I'm the Welfare Director at Grocery Aid, which is the industry charity. Founded in 1857, we support colleagues from the retail, wholesale, manufacturing, production and distribution, in fact the whole supply chain, and all your co-op colleagues regardless of what area of the business you work in. We work closely with the grocery sector and have great support from your co-op. Claire Moore sits on my welfare strategy group, a committee of 20 senior HR directors from across the industry that help shape our welfare programmes. And Becky is a member of our welfare committee who oversee our grant programmes and review policy. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please. So how do we help? We provide emotional, practical and financial support to current and former grocery colleagues through our free and confidential 24/7 helpline, our website, and we also run financial grants programmes subject to applicants meeting our criteria. On the next slide, you'll see our full range of services. This we call our welfare wheel, and today, however, I'm going to focus on the emotional and wellbeing support available to you, your spouses, partners and dependents from day one of working for your co-op. So the next slide, please. We have a helpline 24/7, 365 days a year, which is available for you to call at any time of the day or night. When you call that number, you get straight through to a BACP qualified and accredited counsellor, so you can talk immediately to a counsellor about any of your emotional support that you might need, be that work or personal or relationship issues. And during that call, they'll help you identify perhaps some strategies and goals that you can work on, and you can go away and maybe have a look at how you can help support yourself through that problem and address those issues that you're struggling with. Sometimes there's some solution-focused brief therapy counselling that we can support with as well. And that solution-focused brief therapy is given in the way of either 6 face-to-face counselling sessions or telephone counselling sessions, and is offered to colleagues once you've had an assessment done. There might be reasons when that isn't suitable for you, but in the meantime, you can continue to be supported by those BACP qualified counsellors 24/7 whilst you've been referred on to a more appropriate service. One of the issues we've seen during the pandemic is the impact that it's had on relationships. There's lots of evidence in the press and that has been reported to show that family and relationships have really suffered during the last year. For those colleagues who perhaps have struggled with their relationship, were a little bit on dodgy ground anyway, being together 24/7, not having any outside influences, maybe not going into the office or losing your jobs, has really had that impact. And so we partner with Relate, and Relate offer family relationship counselling or counselling to individuals and couples. Up to 6 sessions of counselling is available with a local counsellor. Many people think Relate's free. We actually pay for those 6 sessions, and that's accessible through our website and through our helpline programmes as well. On the next slide, you'll see our health and wellbeing portal. We know that not everybody has the confidence to speak necessarily, and some colleagues would prefer to do some self-guided learning. The health and wellbeing portal is split into different areas. There's Find Out More guides and wellbeing sessions. So the Find Out More guides are split into mind, body and behaviour. So your mind is your low mood, your anxiety, your stress at work. Body is though getting back to nature that Becky was talking about. You're getting outside, getting enough exercise, healthy eating, getting enough sleep. There's a section on menopause in there as well. And behaviours is addiction, drug and alcohol addiction. We also have some COVID-19 specific content on there as well. Right at the very start of the pandemic, a lot of the calls to our helpline were particularly from retail colleagues who were struggling with going into work. They were struggling with coping with customers who were being aggressive and abusive, and they were struggling with thought of taking COVID back into the home. So we had a fact sheet written on resilience, which has proved incredibly popular, and we've enhanced our COVID-19 content since then, and there are now Find Out More sheets on things like staying connected, keeping well, bereavement, grief and loss. We know colleagues who have lost somebody during the last year through COVID or for another reason, have grieved in a very different way. You might not have been able to have been with a loved one when they passed away. You might not have that support network around you that you usually would have. So there's guidance in there about how you can be supported and how you can support somebody. And also fact sheets on things like redundancy. We support the whole family, don't forget, it's not just the grocery colleagues. So whilst you may have remained in your jobs, it doesn't mean that partners or spouses haven't been affected. We also have some really lovely mindfulness sessions in there that I'd encourage you to go on the website and have a look at and perhaps undertake some mindfulness. Really lovely way at the end of a working day just to spend 10 minutes refocusing your mind and getting back out of your workplace and into your home life again. And also some bite-sized sessions on things like social anxiety and general anxiety as we move in towards the world reopening up and the country reopening up again. For a lot of people, that's going to really trigger anxious feelings and feelings of anxiety. So there's some bite-sized sessions in there about how you can support and help yourself. Next slide, please. Another really great way to support your emotional health and well-being is by downloading Wobot. And Wobot is an artificial intelligence chatbot that's available 24/7. But what Wobot does when you download it from either App Store or Google Play is it checks in with you on once a day. And so Wobot pops up on my phone about 6:30 every evening, asks how I am, what sort of day I had. I can choose to pick from some words it might give me, some emotions it gives me, or free type. And depending on my answers, depends on the route that Wobot will take me on that particular session. So what it can do is it can help you identify problems you didn't even really realise were issues. So a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that I was feeling tired and Wobot asked if I was sleeping okay. And when I thought about it, I wasn't. So it took me down a series of strategies and techniques I could use for improving my sleep. It can help you track your mood. It can help you measure your progress, balance your emotions, help you see if there's certain triggers that cause you to perhaps feel more anxious at various points. We ask you to put the Grocery Aid 1 code into the promo code, and the reason that that's very important is it connects you to our helpline. So if somebody would use trigger words, so for example, if they would say they were using suicidal thoughts, then Wobot would say you need to speak to one of my human colleagues and connect you back up with the helpline. Quite obviously, that a chatbot isn't the best place to be if you are really struggling. And the next slide is an area that we had highlighted by the Welfare Strategy Group that Claire sits on. So when I talked to the group at the tail end of last year, one of the areas they said that colleagues were really struggling with was how to support their children and young people at home with all the changes that have gone on, particularly over the last year with home educating, with schooling, with uncertainty again this year at the moment around exams and decisions that children and young people have got to make about their futures. So we've partnered with Kooth, and Kooth is an online mental wellbeing community for 11 to 25-year-olds. It's a digital platform that you can pass the link on through the website to your children and young people. It's super safe. Every piece of content is moderated, but you have access to professionally trained counsellors on there. There's peer-to-peer support, there's journaling, mood tracking, all sorts of magazine articles and blogs that your children and young people can read and can also provide information for as well. And it means that they have an outlet, they have somewhere safe to speak and talk about any issues or problems that they might not want to bring up at home or might not want to bring up with a teacher. But it also gives you the opportunity to talk to your children and young people as well, and perhaps encourage them to talk about anything that's worrying them. And also don't forget about using Kooth for the younger people in your business as well. Anyone perhaps under 25 who's joined the business this year on your apprentices or grad schemes may be having a very different experience into working life than they would have otherwise had. So it's a really great and useful tool for that as well. Kooth's available throughout the UK via the Grocery Aid link on the website, because we have a licence for the whole of the UK. In some areas it's only available if you're local authority or health authority have purchased it. But as I say, as we have the licence for the whole of the UK, providing you signpost your children and young people through the Grocery Aid website, then they have access to our support. So there's a very brief overview of the emotional wellbeing support services available from Grocery Aid, and I can talk to you about them. But what I'd like to do now is introduce you to Martin, because Martin reached out to Grocery Aid for some support when he was really struggling about 18 months ago. And I think he's much better placed to tell his story than I am. Next slide, please.
Apologies, Mandy, there seems to be an issue with the video playing.
Okay. What I'll do, Becky, is I'll put a link to the video in the chat if that's okay. And if anyone would like to go and have a look at it on our website, then they're very, very welcome to. And then you can look at that in your leisure. So all I finally say is thanks very much for listening to me today. I would encourage you to go to our website to find out more about the support programs that are available. The website address is there, groceryaid.org.uk. If you go into the Get Help section, you'll see all the support that we can provide. And I know there's an opportunity for questions and answers later on, which I'm happy to take. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Mandy. I personally feel very proud to be partnered with Grocery Aid, knowing that we've got a robust programme to support all of our colleagues with their needs. So yeah, thank you very much for showcasing that, Mandy. Paul, over to yourself.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. It's wonderful to be with you this evening. Thank you very much for inviting me along. I will say just off the bat how wonderful it is to hear about all of the initiatives that are going on for colleagues in your co-op. It's so in line with your values and certainly the work that you're doing in terms of the mental health at work programme, mental health champions, and very excited to hear about the Wellbeing app for colleagues as well. I think that's wonderful support. So on my next slide, please, just a bit of background about who we are. So we're Mind, the mental health charity. We are have been established for well over 100 years now, but we essentially, our current strategy is all around supporting or fighting for the mental health of people, particularly the vulnerable in our community, people living in poverty. We have undertaken over the past 12 months a great deal of work and have a lot more work to do in terms of becoming a truly anti-racist charity. And finally, spending a lot of resources on supporting young people, particularly with a focus on trauma. I specifically volunteer and work for Springfield Mind. We're a federation of local minds, if you like, and Springfield Mind very much helped me with my recovery journey. And we've had the pleasure to work with Mid-Counties for years now. It feels like a lifetime. So the next slide, please. So I suppose cooperation with your co-op and how we work with you is twofold. Number one, you do create revenue or funds for the charity, which we then plough back into supporting people in our community with either one-to-one support, peer support, crisis support. So it's really vital. Every penny that gets spent by your co-op with the charity is devoted to that that end. Also, I should mention that you critically do help us, Springfield Mind, with our governance. I don't think Caroline's on the call, or I hope she isn't today, but I will speak. One of your senior managers.
I'm here.
Gosh. Oh no, so better be polite. Well, time for you to blush, because Caroline has been a trustee at Springfield Mind for a long time now, and she makes a huge difference to the way that the charity is run and governed, and we're delighted to have that support on our team. So thank you, Caroline, for that. Next slide, please. So how we've been working with you over the last 12 months, it's always evolving and it's always exciting, and we get a call probably from Rebecca or somebody saying we'd like X, Y, Z, and we get really excited about it because it's a privilege to work with colleagues in your co-op. Over the past 12 months, we've been doing work with Little Pioneers, particularly the management team and how they can work and optimize the well-being of their teams. We've done presentations with the Young Co-operators Network, really great session with young people on their mental health and well-being, and certainly the app that Mandy was talking about, Kooth, is another great support for people in that age group. We also were asked by Karen, who's on the call, to do some work with our regional communities, and again that was another great session talking about how they can build their mental resilience and that of their teams at this time. We continue to champion MHFA with your co-op, and we've done we had a really enjoyable piece of work to do with your co-op travel. As Becky rightly mentioned, you know, they have been really tried and tested by this period, as have most of us really, but it was great to be able to talk to them on a series of video conferences about their well-being, how they could manage how they were feeling, and really provide them with some collective support. We're also supporting Mental Health Awareness Week. It's so great to see that Steve will be sort of doing some work on that as a colleague, but also I think we've done some videos as well to support. So it's a very much two-way process for us. We get huge gratitude out of working with your co-op. We get the funds we need to support people in our community, and hopefully in return, colleagues within your co-op get tools and techniques for managing their mental health and well-being. Okay, the next slide talks about obviously COVID, coronavirus. And the story is really, as the slide suggests, it's the same storm that everybody's been through, but unfortunately we were all in very different boats. So feelings of isolation obviously went through the roof at the start of the pandemic, but interestingly, the latest survey carried out in February 2021 shows that still 26% of the population feel that they're very much isolated. 8 to 13% of the population are having suicidal thoughts. 27% of us are drinking more alcohol to cope with life. 36% of us are eating more, definitely, to cope with life. 42% of us are struggling with anxiety, and particularly that is hitting females in our community really hard in particular. 59% of the population have taken to walking outside as a form of coping. That's really to be welcomed. 42% are visiting green spaces, and 29% are limiting exposure to news, which we find interesting. Unfortunately, COVID has really exploited particularly those who are vulnerable in our communities. And so young adults, the unemployed, full-time students, Black and minority ethnic groups have been particularly hard hit. And also to females, particularly mums, have been really challenged by this COVID. So next slide. What we would like to do, it would be remiss of having this opportunity in front of you to perhaps give you some tips and tricks that maybe you could be using for your mental health and well-being, or that you can pass on to those around you. Rebecca talked brilliantly, far better than I do, about the 5 ways to well-being, and that really would be the cornerstone of people's resilience and building their mental health and well-being. On the next slide, the first thing I'd like to say is that what we found as a charity supporting people during this period with their mental health and well-being, the first thing people say to us when we kind of interact with them is that they apologize and say, I know it must be difficult for everybody at the moment. And we go into this self-depreciating exercise where we blame ourselves. As humans, we're really good at finding a stick to beat ourselves up with. But actually what we need during these times is to be kind to ourselves. So when we work with clients, we talk about writing ourselves a compassionate letter, saying things to yourself that maybe a friend might say, or you might say to a friend who's struggling. We really need to take time during this period to be kind to ourselves and look after our own well-being. And on that note, the next slide, we talk about getting outdoors. And actually, that's the theme of Mental Health Awareness Week. Fresh air makes us happier as human beings. The more fresh air we get, the more oxygen we'll be breathing. It increases the amount of serotonin, the happy hormone we have, making us far more content. It gives us a lot of energy and a much sharper mind. So there really is a case for us getting outdoors on a regular, hopefully daily basis. On the next slide, this kind of is a picture of the journey that I have to now go on. Getting physically active every day is great for our body and minds. We know we get that great rush of endorphins when we're exercising. It's really brilliant for reducing stress and anxiety, and it certainly lowers rates of depression. So we advocate 25 minutes of that per day to really keep yourself in tip-top form. The next slide is it's a simple point, but I think actually a lot of what we talk about in terms of mental health and building resilience is simple. The simple changes that can be made, but hydrating. Your brain, 75% of it is water. If we're not drinking enough throughout the day, our brain slows down and it stops working properly, and we get very anxious and we experience low mood. So a rule of thumb of 2 litres of water a day, or 11 glasses, really important actually to keep ourselves running smoothly. Next slide. I'm so proud of myself for branding this in the right way. Anyway, cut the caffeine. A cup of coffee or tea that's caffeinated has a half-life of 6 hours. And what that does is our caffeine intake, if we don't measure it, it starts to increase the amount of stress hormones we have pumping around the body. We know it causes insomnia, and I'm sure that was one of the things that Mandy looked at when she was struggling with her sleep. It also cuts the production of a calming neurotransmitter called GABA, and by cutting the production of that neurotransmitter, it fuels anxiety and panic attacks. The next slide about diet. Knowing what foods and what we shouldn't be eating can sometimes be really confusing, at least that's my excuse. But if we can take time to improve our diet, we will see a payoff in terms of our mood, energy, and a greater clarity of thinking from a good diet. The next slide I've been a bit naughty with. I've put this on because I thought it was quite funny. So there are 2 schools of thoughts here. One is about keeping fish. I don't know if you remember, but in GP surgeries once upon a time, they used to have a little fish tank with fish in them. And actually, there's a good deal of research that keeping fish or a pet, a cat, or I think I can see Barbara stroking something. It's a bit phased out, Barbara. I think it's your cat. So all of that is really good for our well-being, and so you're encouraged to do that. On the flip side, we'd like you to eat fish, and I'm sorry for the vegans amongst us, but perhaps not the goldfish, but a nice tin of Co-op sardines will do the trick. And the reason for that is it contains omega-3, a fish oil that's really brilliant for combating things like depression, etc. The next slide is kind of goes along with the scheme, the slide that I did at the top of this section, which is that kindness is actually really healing for ourselves. So carrying out acts of kindness, whether they're small or large, really increases our own happiness. We get a greater sense of satisfaction about life, and it really fuels good well-being. So as the Dalai Lama says here, be kind whenever possible, because being kind to other people does in fact fuel your own mental resilience. Mandy talked beautifully about the power of mindfulness. So I'm not going to labor this point, but actually mindfulness does deliver a greater connection with the body, and therefore being able to act in its better interest. So it's all about calming the mind down, as the graphic shows, trying to have a very simple and slow-paced day is really cathartic for us, and it makes positive improvements in the way that the brain works. So I would just encourage you to use or visit the program that Mandy was speaking about. The next slide, Mandy also covered this about how important our sleep is. It really is just as important as making sure that we eat correctly, we drink correctly, and we almost make it a #1 priority for us. It allows us and our bodies time to repair ourselves, so time to process the day that has gone before, and also consolidate memories and processes from that day, but also wipe the slate clean. So a good night's sleep, when we can get into a solid routine 7 days a week with our sleeping habits, really pays off in terms of our energy and motivation to deal with everyday ups and downs. The next piece is about positivity, gratitude journaling. Spend 30 days just writing, perhaps in a journal, some good things that you can be happy about in your life, no matter how small. If you do that for 30 days, far more effective than a course of antidepressants. So really powerful, actually. Some of these very simple interventions are, they can really pay off huge dividends for your well-being. So making sure you're noticing the stuff in your life that you can be grateful for is really positive. And finally, I mean, we've heard so much tonight about how colleagues are really comprehensively supported by your co-op. But important to say that, of course, aside from the great programs like Grocery Aid, also Mind is there for people in our communities to count on for support, as are other great charities like Rethink and indeed the Samaritans. But the key message is that if you are struggling with your mental health and well-being, or somebody you know is, the earlier that you reach out for support, the quicker we can get you on a recovery journey. So thank you very much for listening to me. Like Mandy, I'm going to stay to the end. I'm very happy to take questions, but thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks very much, Paul. And a huge thank you to Paul and Springfield Mind for the enormous support they've given the Society, its colleagues and members. And I hope that Paul's given you a flavour there of how Mind have been supporting us to support our colleagues and members, and equally some tips for you to take away this evening as well. So thank you. Thanks very much, Paul. I know there's some lovely comments coming in on the comments on the chat function at the moment. So there's a couple of comments around colleagues. I assume the colleagues feeling very proud to work at your co-op and the support they get from Grocery Aid and Mind. And then there's a comment around Ruth has put on there that I'm particularly impressed at the layering of help which has been given, and also the focus on recovery. Obviously, recovery is so important when it comes to mental well-being. So thank you for those that have commented in the chat box. It's now over to yourselves. So we've got a question and answer session now. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got about 10 minutes now for you to ask any questions that you may have for myself, Paul or Mandy. So if you want to pop them in the chat box, or if you want to pop your hand up and you can take yourself off mute and do it that way, whichever you feel most comfortable doing. Karen, if you can facilitate that for me, that'd be brilliant.
So I'm not showing any hands. I've got Ryan, store manager. Let's just see what his mental health seems to be unknown. So Ryan is I'm a store manager from Rosebery Road food store in Gloucester. Mental health still seems to be unknown stroke intimidating topic to deal with for many managers, whether this is down to lack of knowledge or confidence is unknown. But the new training recently at an operational level has been a really big step in the right direction and very well received from the managers, so thank you. Will these new mental health champions be assigned from each district / area of the business? And if so, what will their roles be and how will they bridge the gap between stores, senior management and HR?
Okay, thanks, Karen. Thanks very much for your question, Ryan. I'll pick that one up. First of all, it's great to hear that the training that's been put in place has started to be a step in the right direction for our managers across mid-counties. In terms of the mental health champions, the way that will work is we won't assign colleagues to districts. We will ask colleagues to put themselves forward. Obviously, this is quite a big role for a colleague to take on. So what we don't want to do is start asking, not forcing, but saying to somebody, actually, you do it for this district and you do it for that district. So we'll ask colleagues to put themselves forward, and then colleagues can then choose who they want to call upon. So what the thinking behind the mental health champions is that they have a bio. So, for example, if it was myself, I might say that I live in Staffordshire, I have a 15-year-old son, and then somebody can kind of look at that and say, actually, that person is quite similar to me, and I might feel quite comfortable talking to that person about my mental well-being. So it doesn't have to be talking to somebody out of your same trading group. It could be, it could be a travel colleague talking to a food colleague. So that's how that will work. And it is a peer support. So that colleague, that mental health champion, will have full training. They'll be supported by Every Mind at Work on a monthly basis through peer support through Every Mind, and also they'll be there to signpost. So they're not there as in a counselling position. They're there to signpost to the great support we've got through the mechanisms of Grocery Aid and Mind. So I hope that answers that question, Ryan.
Thanks, Becky. We've got another one from Daisy that actually Paul or Mandy might be able to help with. Working from home, it's sometimes difficult to maintain a good work-life balance. Have you got any tips or advice on improving this? Or on the flip side, as the world begins to open, do you have any tips on adjusting to life back in the office?
I'm going to actually pose this question to Paul, if that's okay, because we talked about this quite a lot when we talked to our travel colleagues last month. So, Paul, can I ask you to answer that one, please?
Yeah, it's a really great question, Daisy, and a lot of people are asking this. So first of all, a good work-life balance when you're particularly working from home. Everybody is struggling with this. Our advice is really, first of all, maybe to structure your day so that you have a definite start time, a definite finish time. Building in breaks is critical. So typically what I've been trialing at the moment is to try and block time so that I do 30 minutes of work and then a quick 5-minute rest, and then go walk or get some more coffee, or decaffeinated, of course, or water, but try and break it up in terms of sectioning it. The other thing that's really useful, and I know that you will be moving probably from video call to video call to video call, but it's trying to break that up, but also giving yourself focus time. So putting on some music. There are loads of productivity music tracks out there that you can download off YouTube or Apple or whatever, but giving yourself that time to focus. Particularly when maybe you're planning your week for a productive week, or you've got a particular piece of work that requires that focus. The other thing we find is, so for example, I work from my bedroom most of the time at the moment. And actually, one of the tips that we have is that when I finish the day, I throw a sheet over my workstation so I can't see it. And that's really important to me. It sort of closes the door and makes subconsciously makes me move from work mode into home life mode. So that's really important. In terms of going back to the office, I think interestingly, I have been going back sort of once a week to my own office. And I have to say the first couple of weeks is really, as you say, Daisy, it can be quite anxiety provoking for us. So what we would say is to lower yourself in gently. If there's the opportunity maybe to reduce it and not go back all at once, and to sort of ease yourself in. But if you are going back full on in the future, then what we would ask you to do is to be realistic and not to be kind to yourself in terms of what you expect yourself to be able to cope with. It is a case of dipping your toe back in the water, but at the same time, what you should anticipate is that yes, it will be a little bit of an adjustment for you, but as time passes, we soon will get back into the swing of how things used to be. Hope that's okay, Becky.
Lovely, that's lovely. Thanks ever so much, Paul.
We've got another question here from Phil saying, really proud of the work Becky and the team are doing with our friends at Mind and Grocery Aid. Is there anything else we can do to support you? So forgive me, Phil, if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming we're talking about supporting Grocery Aid and Mind here.
Mandy, would you like to?
Please jump in. Thanks, Phil. I think what I'd like to say is that you support the charity incredibly well. We have obviously financial support. So as a charity, we don't charge for our services. They're all free to point of access for you as a business, as your colleagues, but you do make a donation to the charity and you do support our fundraising events as well with money coming through. So that's absolutely great. But also, as much as financial, it's also time. So the time that Claire and Becky and other members of your teams give to our committees and supporting the work that we do, we couldn't do what we do without that. So Becky does an amazing job on the Welfare Committee, keeping us all in line and making sure our grants programmes are all going as they should be. And Claire's a great support, as I say, through the Welfare Strategy Group, which is so vital in making sure that the support services that we're delivering for you to support colleagues are actually relevant. There's no point in us coming up with support programmes that actually don't meet the needs of your colleagues. So it's vitally important. So all I'd say is, from our perspective, just keep talking about us, just keep raising awareness about us is probably the biggest thing that you could do on top of everything that you're doing at the moment to make sure that colleagues are aware of the support that's available and that they do reach out when they need it.
Thanks, Mandy. And Paul?
Well, what always amazes me whenever I get a call, particularly from you, Becky, is we're always challenged to innovate, and the solutions that we've been delivering, particularly over the last 12 months for your co-op, have been really different and innovative and exciting to be a part of. So we enjoy doing that. But keep doing what you're doing. It is brilliant. We do unashamedly count on you. You are a major partnership for the charity, and we're very privileged to have such a great relationship with you. You're like family to us. So thank you, Phil.
That's great. Daisy wants to say thank you, Paul, for the great tips. She's definitely going to start implementing those. She's also, we've got with the new app for colleagues. It sounds really interesting. Can you tell us a bit more about it and when will it go live? So that'd be you, Becky.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Daisy. So we're looking to roll out the app, first of all, in our support services head office in June. So we will use that as a pilot, first of all, with that cohort of colleagues. So yeah, look out for that, Daisy, because that'll be for you as well. And then in terms of the app, as I say, it's absolutely amazing. I can't speak highly enough of it. Obviously, I've seen its functionality, and it's very much based on colleagues completing surveys of how they're feeling, and then what the app does then, it tailors a wellbeing toolkit to that colleague. So nobody's toolkit will be the same as somebody else's, because it really depends on how you've answered the surveys that are posted on there. It's completely anonymous, so your app is your own app. You have your own sign-on as a colleague, and as I said earlier, the content is updated every week, so there's something new on there all the time, and every Mind at Work work very closely with mental health professionals as well. So we know that the content that's being put on there is bang up to date for our colleagues. So really exciting, and I personally can't wait to start the trial in support services next month.
Brilliant, thanks, Becky. I think I can answer this one. Emma's asking, the presentation has been really informative. Can we share this presentation with our teams? The answer is yes. This whole presentation's being recorded and it's going to be put online so everybody can have access to it in their own time, basically. Hope that helps, Emma. And that's it at the moment.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So, just moving on now to the possibility thinking session. Thank you very much, Karen. I'd like to invite you now to take part in a short possibility thinking session. As previously mentioned, your ideas gathered through the session will help shape the Society's 5-year sustainability planning, and we'll use this to kickstart a stakeholder alignment programme to help develop our Society's 5-year plan. So if I can ask you to consider everything that's been discussed during the session and your own thoughts and ideas, I invite you to list all possible answers to the questions showing on the slide. Feel free, as I said earlier, to be really open in your ideas. No idea is a bad idea, so whether it sounds like a crazy idea, just pop it in the chat because all ideas are great for us. I'll then ask you to prioritise your ideas and what you think is the most important for our colleagues and our members. So if I can just ask you to take the next 5-10 minutes to read through the possibility thinking session questions and then pop your answers in the chat, and then we can see what comes of that. That would be fantastic. While people are reading through and just populating their ideas moving forward, Paul, would you mind just answering another question? So we've got a question from Louise. It said, Paul, what should we be saying to some of our most vulnerable members that are saying they're scared to be going out again?
Yeah, thanks for asking me that. I was busy typing in the chat to try and get a reply in, so you've relieved me of that particular burden. Louise, it's a great question, and a lot of people are struggling with this. We heard in the stats that sort of 25% of the population are still struggling with anxiety as we seem to be coming out of lockdown and are still isolating at home. So the first thing is that if members are able to talk to you about that, I think that's hugely powerful, and it's brilliant that you have that relationship with your members. If they can talk to you about that, that's half the battle. If we can get things out of our head and talk to other people about our concerns or our fears, the human brain is amazing, and in more than 9 out of 10 cases, just being able to talk about what we're struggling with and how we're feeling helps us in our own right to be able to work out what we should be doing and what those challenges are. So listening to members on your part will be hugely beneficial to them. Secondly, it's about signposting, really. Of course, you are brilliant at running your co-op and you're brilliant in terms of the things that you do, but we don't expect you to be mental health professionals, and that's really where you need to signpost. And in the case of members, that signposting would be to charities like Mind, Rethink, or the Samaritans. It would be to their GP or local mental health trust, but essentially saying to them it's okay. A lot of people feel this way. We say that not to minimize the way people are feeling, but actually to make them feel that they're not alone with these thoughts. But secondly, the importance of getting some support. Everybody deserves better mental health. And so your members very much deserve it, just as anybody else does. So thank you for that. It's a great question, Louise.
Thanks very much, Paul. So just as a reminder, you're just thinking about obviously what we've talked about this evening, the work that we've been doing, and what more you think we could be doing, any new ideas for our colleagues and members, how can we ensure that no one's left behind, and what would you think that your co-op would look like when it comes to mental wellbeing for its colleagues and members in 5 years' time? So there's a comment coming from Ruth, which is lovely. So Ruth's put in the chat, I can imagine I can imagine a future in which every single colleague is knowledgeable and equipped to support their own and their colleagues' mental health. No one would return to work after a period of mental ill health to silence from their colleagues, from embarrassment or a fear of making things worse. How is it going today, mate, without fear of responses becoming the complete norm? I totally agree with that, Ruth, and something that we're really trying to reinforce at your co-op with our colleagues. You know, if somebody came into work with a broken leg, I'm sure colleagues wouldn't ignore that. And that's, you know, exactly where we're striving to be with mental health. That's, yeah, I totally agree with that comment.
Daisy's come up with a good one. Continuing to facilitate open conversations with colleagues and members. I think we've got to keep those lines of communication open, haven't we? So it's part of the norm, really, rather than, you know, just at certain times.
Absolutely.
Danny says there's still a huge stigma around mental health in the workplace. Many are still scared to speak up about their mental health and feelings. Hold on. There's so many coming in now.
So Danny's put on there, so there's a huge stigma around mental health in the workplace. Many are still scared to speak up about their mental health and feelings because of how they will be perceived by their colleagues or managers. How would you suggest breaking out of this? Danny, that's obviously quite disappointing to hear. And I would suggest that you do speak to your line manager in the first instance, and then if obviously that's an issue, then obviously to go down the other channels. And obviously if you'd like to speak to me after the session, please feel free to. I think Ruth's comment earlier about reducing the stigma and managers feeling comfortable about talking about mental health is sometimes a problem as well. So sometimes we feel that our managers may not approach mental health in the right way, but sometimes that's because of a lack of confidence from the managers. And actually it's our role to build that confidence in our line managers to have those conversations and not feel that if they say something, it's going to be detriment to the colleague. Paul, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely absolutely right. I do think as a society, you are far more progressive than most businesses are. So you do operate at a gold standard. So it is, as Becky says, that is something to be worked on within that part of the business, because we do need to normalise these conversations. The broken leg analogy that Becky used is absolutely spot on. We need people to be able to talk about this, and actually by talking about it and opening it up, that has a massive impact, a positive impact on the well-being of colleagues in your co-op.
Brilliant, thank you. There's lots of, sorry, go on, Karen.
Yeah, I was going to say there's lots coming in. There's a good one, a dedicated campaign on young men's mental health. A lot of time, sometimes guys are less likely to talk about their mental health than perhaps women are. And
absolutely, no, that's a really great idea, and I think you may or may not be aware that the biggest killer in men under the age of 45 is actually suicide. So it's definitely something that we should weave into what we're doing around mental well-being. So yeah, it's a great call.
And there's a couple of comments that are very similar regarding encouraging communications, reducing the embarrassment around talking about your feelings. So there's a lot coming in like that. Colleagues encouraged to take mental health days.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's time, everyone knows about it. I like the idea of the mental health champions. I think this will really help to get the message out to everybody that it's okay.
Just on that comment that Caroline's made, I think that will help. And there's quite a lot of talk in the chat about colleagues feel confident and comfortable to open up on how they're feeling. And I really do believe that the mental health champions across the society will really support that, because obviously these colleagues will be advocates of mental well-being and will really start to talk about what we're doing. Our communications team do a fantastic job internally, but that will really support with actually having those, encouraging that communication across the society. Wendy's put mental health days could work well. That's great. Thanks, Wendy.
5 years' time, everyone knows about it, able to talk about it, confident to use and refer to it.
Absolutely. And Wendy's put on there, it's great mental health is really being taken more seriously and it's saving lives. Absolutely. And that's, that's how I feel that, it's our role at the moment to make sure that we're putting those preventative measures in to stop any colleagues getting to that awful crisis point. So, it's to really build that preventative measure in the first place for our colleagues. Brilliant. Okay. Is there any more for any more?
Yeah, there is open conversations. It's just opening that conversation, isn't it? And stop people feeling embarrassed to admit they have a problem, remove stigma.
Yeah, and then we've got Caroline, acknowledge that there will be some people, crikey, sorry, acknowledge that there'll be some people who are nervous about returning to the office. So we need to be mindful about our communication around this. We could show photos, videos of how the office now looks and manages to have a conversation with colleagues on an individual basis beforehand. I think that's really important for our colleagues in the support function, because they don't, necessarily, well, they haven't been there, they don't necessarily know what it looks like. So I think that's a great shout to actually give them that kind of virtual sense before they return back to the office, Caroline. Yeah.
Daisy said more events like this to support members as well as colleagues.
Absolutely, and that's really part of the start of this session. Yes, we have done a few sessions with our members and community groups, but actually, now we recognise that we need to do more, and absolutely we will we'll start to look at these type of events. And I think again, agree with Daisy.
Yeah. I think Wendy's got a really good point here. Trusting who you are talking to, knowing jokes are not being made behind your back. So making sure the people that we are having as these champions are responsible adults, for want of a better phrase, sort of thing, that they're not going to talk behind their back.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Wendy. And clearly there will be an ethical code of conduct when it comes to these mental health champions, as it would be in any, coaching relationship or mentoring relationship. There will be that code of conduct put in place for those relationships. They're totally confidential. Right. Thank you ever so much for that. That was fantastic. Some really, really, really great ideas in there. So thank you so much to everybody that's participated. So as I said earlier, so all the ideas that we've used will be included, all the ideas will be included to help shape the Society's 5-year plan. It'll kickstart the stakeholder alignment programme to help develop our Society's 5-year sustainability plan. So thank you so much, because this conversation has just been fantastic. So just a few things from me before we close the session. First of all, please don't forget it's our AGM on the 13th of May, 6:30 till 8:30. Obviously in a virtual sense the way we are now. So please join us on the 13th of May. Have your voice in getting involved. And I'd now like to just show you a short video from our Society's President Helen Wiseman to formally close this session.
Hello, I'm Helen Wiseman, Society President, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for this session today. I hope that you found it both interesting and informative. This is part of our ongoing commitment to get members more involved and listening to their views on the society that they own. I'm delighted to tell you that we've been nominated as Leading Co-op of the Year, and you can find out more about how to vote in this award at the end of the video. And finally, I look forward to our AGM on the 13th of May. I hope that you can join us, take part and vote on issues that matter, and find out how we are driving the success of your society, supporting our communities and working towards a better, fairer world. Thank you.
So before I do close the session, I would just like to say we have been nominated for Leading Co-op of the Year at your co-op, which is just so exciting and absolutely a fantastic thing to be nominated for. So I would ask if you could just pop on to uk.coop/vote. I'll leave that on for a few minutes, and pop your vote in for your co-op, and fingers crossed we'll hear some good news in the next few weeks. Thank you again sincerely for everybody that's participated tonight, and thank you obviously for joining the call. It's much appreciated, and have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you on the 13th of May.
Thanks very much for inviting us.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.